Please! Please don't! I didn't do it!
You think that wheelchair makes you untouchable? You people never follow the rules!
My dad's coming! Please stop!
I am the rules!
There's a moment in life when you realize your silence has a price. Michael Thompson learned that lesson the hard way when the HOA president at Riverside Gardens did something unforgivable. She tasered his disabled daughter in a parking lot. But here's what Karen Morrison didn't know. Michael wasn't just another concerned parent. He spent 15 years fighting bullies exactly like her. And he was about to teach her that real power doesn't come from a badge or a clipboard. Before we get into this incredible story of justice and redemption, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below and tell me your country. And please hit that subscribe button for more real-life stories that'll restore your faith in justice. Michael Thompson sat quietly in the back row of courtroom 7B, and nobody in that room had any idea who he really was. He wore a baseball cap pulled low and dark sunglasses that hid months of exhaustion. That was intentional. For now, he wanted to observe. He wanted to see Karen Morrison walk into this courtroom and have no clue what was coming. 3 rows ahead of him sat his daughter Emma. At 19 years old, Emma had already survived more heartbreak than most people face in a lifetime. 2 years earlier, a car accident had stolen her ability to walk, but the accident hadn't touched her spirit knot until Karen Morrison came along and nearly broke it completely. Emma sat in her wheelchair in the accessible seating area, and even from this distance, Michael could see the tremor running through her shoulders. Courtrooms made her anxious. Facing Karen Morrison would test everything she had. When Karen walked in, she moved like she owned the place. She wore an expensive designer suit. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, and that expression on her face, that self-righteous sneer, was something Michael had come to know very well. As the HOA president of Riverside Gardens, Karen had filed complaint after complaint. She had no idea that sitting behind her was the assistant commissioner of the state civil rights division. She had no idea she'd just walked into her own reckoning. Emma had been so excited about that apartment. After 2 long years of living at home, under her father's careful watch, she needed independence. She needed to prove to herself that the accident hadn't defined her entire future. The accessible unit at Riverside Gardens seemed perfect: ground floor, widened doorways, a rolling shower designed for wheelchair access, and a small patio where she could garden. "Dad, it's perfect," Emma had said, her green eyes sparkling. "I can finally have my own place." Michael worried anyway. That was his job as a father. But he also understood that Emma needed this chance to stand on her own to feed Evan, if those feet were different now. The problem started in the very first week. Karen appeared at Emma's door on a Tuesday morning, with a clipboard in hand. Emma's welcome mat was the wrong color. That blue mat with yellow flowers, the one her mother had given her as a housewarming gift, had to go. Karen said Riverside Gardens only allowed beige, tan, or gray. Emma had exactly 48 hours to replace it, or face a fine. When Emma called her dad that evening, she actually laughed about it. "Can you believe this, Dad? It's just a mat?" But Michael's blood was already beginning to boil. The Fair Housing Act was crystal clear. You couldn't discriminate like that. But Emma stopped him before he could go on a rant. "Dad, stop," she said gently. "It's just a mat. I'll get a beige one tomorrow. It's not worth fighting over." Emma didn't realize that it would never be just about a mat. Over the next 2 months, Karen found endless reasons to target her. The small wind chime on Emma's patio violated noise ordinances. The portable ramp her physical therapist installed wasn't approved by the architectural committee. The handicapped parking sign Emma requested, denied. It would set a precedent, Karen said. Each complaint was meticulously documented. Each one came with passive-aggressive politeness and the constant threat of fines, violations, and eviction. Emma tried her best to comply with everything, but Michael watched helplessly as his daughter's light slowly dimmed with each new demand. "She's doing this on purpose, Dad," Emma finally admitted during one of his visits. "She told Mrs. Patterson next door that people like me lower property values." She said disabled people should live in special facilities, not in regular communities. Michael's blood boiled, his hands clenched into fists. But Emma grabbed his hand firmly. "Please, Dad, don't do anything," she begged. "I need to handle this myself. If you swoop in and fix everything, I'll never know if I can stand on my own 2 feet. So Michael waited. He listened. He documented everything Emma told him. He advised her on her legal rights. And he watched helplessly as his daughter's light dimmed week after week. It happened on a Saturday afternoon in late September. Emma had been selected to testify at a county commission hearing about accessibility improvements in public housing. She'd worked on her speech for weeks, pouring her heart and soul into it. This was her moment to advocate for people like her. She left her apartment at 1:30 in the afternoon, giving herself plenty of time. Her specially modified van was parked in her designated accessible spot. She was transferring from her wheelchair into the driver's seat when Karen Morrison suddenly appeared. "You can't park here," Karen announced firmly. "This is my assigned spot," Emma said, confused. "You can see the sign right there." That sign was installed without proper board approval. "I'm having it removed on Monday. This spot is now reserved for visitors only. Karen, the hearing starts in 30 minutes. I need to leave right now." "Then you should have planned better. Move your vehicle immediately, or I'll have it towed." What happened next, the security footage would later reveal, was the moment Karen Morrison made her fatal mistake. Emma was frustrated. She was desperate not to be late for the most important speech of her young life. She tried to reason with Karen. She explained about the hearing, about the Fair Housing Act requirements, and about basic human decency. Karen's response was to pull out her phone and call a towing company. With panic rising in her chest, Emma tried to finish transferring into her van. Her hands were shaking badly as she tried to fold her wheelchair. That's when it happened. "If you don't move right now, I'll make you move," Karen threatened. "How exactly do you plan to do that?" Emma asked, her voice breaking with fear and frustration. Karen reached into her designer purse and pulled out a small device, a taser. "The HOA board approved these for security purposes. You're creating a disturbance. I'm authorized to use necessary force to maintain order in this community." "You can't be serious." Emma never finished that sentence. Karen pressed the taser directly to Emma's shoulder and pulled the trigger without hesitation. The security footage showed everything. Emma convulsed violently. She fell from the van's driver's seat onto the hot asphalt parking lot. Her wheelchair clattered beside her with a crash. She lay there completely unable to move, as electrical current tore through her body for 5 eternal seconds. When it finally stopped, Emma was crying. She was gasping for breath. Her body, the body that had already betrayed her once, was betraying her again. Karen stood over her, taser still in hand, and said words that would be quoted in every news report for the next month. "Maybe now, you'll learn to follow the rules." A neighbor called 911 immediately. Emma was rushed to the hospital with burns on her shoulder, severe muscle pain, and trauma that no doctor could measure on any chart. She missed her hearing testimony that day. She missed the chance to advocate for people like her. And Karen Morrison went home and filed a violation notice against Emma for disturbing the peace. For the next 3 weeks, Michael Thompson worked with a fury he hadn't felt in 15 years. During the day, he maintained his regular duties as Assistant Commissioner of the state's Civil Rights Division. During the nights and weekends, he became Emma's advocate with every fiber of his being. He contacted the Riverside Gardens HOA board directly. They told him the truth. Karen had lied. There was no taser approval. There was no policy allowing physical force. There was no security authorization whatsoever. Michael obtained the security footage from that day. He documented every single violation notice Karen had issued to Emma over those 3 months. He interviewed other residents. What he found was shocking. 14 people came forward with similar stories. Mrs. Patricia Chen, an elderly woman with a walker, had been fined repeatedly for taking too long to collect her mail. "I'm 83 years old," she told Michael, her voice shaking. "How fast does she expect me to move?" Marcus Webb, a veteran with PTSD and a service dog, had been threatened with eviction because his dog barked once during a firework display. She said veterans should keep their problems private and stop making everyone else uncomfortable, Marcus said quietly. The Rodriguez family had been cited multiple times for speaking Spanish too loudly on their balcony. Every single story made Michael's blood boil hotter. But he documented them all, methodically, professionally. He was building a case not just for Emma, but for every person Karen Morrison had tormented. Michael filed a criminal complaint for assault with a deadly weapon. He filed a civil rights complaint with his own division. He contacted the district attorney's office personally. He reached out to the Fair Housing Alliance. And then he did something Karen Morrison would never expect. He filed a personal lawsuit on Emma's behalf, not just for the assault, but for systematic harassment, discrimination based on disability, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and violation of the Fair Housing Act. Karen's expensive lawyer filed a motion to dismiss. He claimed Emma was exaggerating. He said the taser use was justified. He said Karen was simply enforcing legitimate HOA rules. The judge denied the motion immediately. The trial was set for early October. Michael arrived at the courthouse early that morning and sat in the very back row, exactly where he wanted to be. He wore that baseball cap. He wore those dark sunglasses. Emma didn't know he was there yet. He wanted to observe. He wanted to see how Karen carried herself. He wanted to watch her lawyer's strategy unfold. Some battles require public confrontation. Others require patience and observation. This one required both. Emma arrived with her mother, Sarah, who pushed her wheelchair carefully. Sarah's eyes were red from crying, but her jaw was set with determination. They took their seats in the accessible section. Emma's lawyer, Jennifer Torres, was already at the plaintiff's table. She was one of the best civil rights attorneys in the entire state. "Cases like this are why I became a lawyer," she'd told Michael when he called her. "People like Karen Morrison need to be stopped." Karen arrived at exactly 9 o'clock sharp, 15 minutes before the hearing was scheduled. She wore a navy blue suit that cost more than Emma's monthly rent. Judge Maria Santos entered, a woman known for her no-nonsense approach and deep commitment to justice. She had absolutely zero tolerance for discrimination. "We're here today for Morrison versus Thompson," the judge announced. "Miss Torres, you may begin." Jennifer stood, buttoning her blazer professionally. "Your Honor, this case is about power and cruelty. Karen Morrison used her position as HOA president to systematically harass my client, Emma Thompson, because of her disability. Over 3 months, she issued 14 separate violation notices for minor or completely fabricated infractions. She denied the reasonable accommodations required by law. She created a hostile environment, specifically designed to force my client from her home. And when Emma dared to stand up for herself, Karen Morrison assaulted her with a taser, causing physical injury and severe emotional trauma. Karen's expression never changed. That same self-righteous smugness remained fixed on her face. Jennifer called Emma to testify first. Sarah wheeled her carefully to the witness stand. Emma's hands were shaking visibly as she was sworn in. Her voice started soft, barely audible. "It was my second day in the apartment," Emma began. "I was so excited to finally have my own place. I had put out a welcome mat that my mom gave me as a housewarming gift. It was blue with yellow flowers. Karen knocked on my door and told me it violated HOA rules. She said I had 48 hours to replace it or she would fine me." "How did that make you feel?" Jennifer asked gently. Confused, Emma said, "It seemed like such a small thing, but I wanted to follow the rules, so I got a beige mat the very next day." Emma's voice grew steadier as she described each violation notice. Her voice grew stronger as anger slowly replaced her fear. This was her father's daughter, the strong, fierce woman he had raised. Then Jennifer asked about that Saturday afternoon. Emma's composure cracked. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I thought she was joking at first. I thought surely no one would actually butt. Then she pressed it against my shoulder, and I felt she stopped, unable to continue." "Take your time," Jennifer said softly. Emma wiped her eyes with a tissue. It felt like my whole body was being ripped apart from the inside. I fell out of my van. I couldn't move at all. I couldn't even breathe. And she just stood there looking down at me like I was nothing. Like I was garbage. "What did she say to you?" Jennifer asked. "She said, 'Maybe now you'll learn to follow the rules.'" A murmur rippled through the entire courtroom. Even Judge Santos's expression hardened noticeably. "Emma, how has this incident affected you since then?" "I have nightmares almost every night. I'm afraid to leave my apartment. I missed the hearing I had worked so hard for. I can't stop feeling like I deserved it somehow. Like if I had just been better, quieter, less of a problem, none of this would have happened." Emma paused, gathering her courage. "I know that's not true rationally, but I can't stop thinking it." Michael's heart shattered into pieces, hearing those words. This was what Karen Morrison had done to his brilliant, beautiful daughter. She had made Emma doubt her own worth as a human being. Jennifer played the security footage for the entire courtroom. The room fell completely silent. Everyone watched Karen approach Emma in that parking lot. The audio was crystal clear. Emma was explaining about the important hearing. Karen was threatening to tow her van. Then Karen pulled out the taser. You could hear the disbelief and fear in Emma's voice. "You can't be serious." The moment Karen pressed that taser to Emma's shoulder, several people in the courtroom gasped audibly. They watched Emma convulse. They heard her cry out in pain. Michael gripped the bench in front of him so hard, his knuckles turned white. The video showed Emma on the ground, crying, completely unable to move. Karen was standing over her with an expression that was cold and satisfied. No remorse, no concern, just pure contempt. When the video finally ended, Judge Santos looked at Karen with undisguised disgust. "Miss Morrison, is that you, in the video?" "Your Honor, my client maintains she acted in self-defense," Karen's lawyer said quickly. "I asked Miss Morrison," the judge said firmly. "Stand up." Karen stood reluctantly. "Is that you, in the video, assaulting a disabled teenage girl with a taser?" "I was enforcing HOA regulations." She was being combative. I saw no combative behavior whatsoever. I saw a young woman trying to leave for an important appointment. Answer my question directly. Did you use a taser on Emma Thompson? Yes, but sit down. The rest of Karen's defense crumbled quickly. "Your Honor," Jennifer said, standing with purpose, "I'd like to call one more witness. Someone with extensive expertise in fair housing law and civil rights violations." "Proceed," Judge Santos said. "I call Assistant Commissioner Michael Thompson." The courtroom stirred with confusion. Karen's head snapped up, looking around frantically. Her face went pale. Michael stood up in the back row, removed his sunglasses and baseball cap slowly, and walked down the center aisle with deliberate steps. The moment Karen saw his face clearly, all color drained from hers. She leaned over to whisper frantically to her lawyer, who suddenly looked like he wanted to be absolutely anywhere else. Emma turned in her wheelchair, her eyes going wide. "Dad." Michael paused beside her and placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "I'm here, sweetheart. I've always been here." Then he continued to the witness stand. After being sworn in, Jennifer asked, "Can you please state your name and occupation for the record?" "Michael Thompson. I serve as Assistant Commissioner for the State Civil Rights Division. I've held this position for 15 years. And what is your relationship to the plaintiff?" "Emma Thompson is my daughter." Karen looked faint right there in her seat. "Commissioner Thompson, have you reviewed this case?" "I have, though I recused myself from direct involvement due to obvious personal interest. I ensured the case was properly investigated by our division's most experienced team." "And what did that investigation find?" "That Karen Morrison engaged in a systematic pattern of harassment and discrimination against my daughter, based solely on her disability. Over 14 documented incidents in just 3 months, Miss Morrison violated the Fair Housing Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and multiple state civil rights statutes. The investigation also uncovered similar discrimination against other disabled residents. Elderly residents, veterans, and racial minorities. Michael looked directly at Karen, making sure she saw his face clearly. In my professional opinion, Ms. Morrison's actions constitute some of the most egregious civil rights violations I've encountered in my 15-year career. People in positions of power have a responsibility to protect those they serve, not to terrorize them. Ms. Morrison betrayed that responsibility in the most cruel way imaginable. She targeted someone she perceived as weak, someone she thought couldn't fight back. She was wrong. By the time Michael finished his testimony, Karen was no longer smug. She looked absolutely terrified. Judge Santos called for closing arguments. Jennifer was powerful and impassioned. Karen's lawyer didn't even bother to put up a real fight. "I'll issue my ruling after a brief recess," Judge Santos announced. The recess lasted 30 minutes. Michael sat with Emma and Sarah, holding his daughter's hand tightly. "You came," Emma whispered. "You were here the whole time. I promised I would fight for you. I keep my promises. I thought I needed to do this alone. You did do it alone, sweetheart. You testified. You were brave. You told your truth. But sometimes being strong also means letting people who love you stand beside you. That's not weakness, Emma. That's wisdom." When the court reconvened, Judge Santos looked grimmer than before. "I've reviewed all the evidence, testimony, and applicable law. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of discrimination and harassment I've encountered on this bench. Ms. Morrison, stand up." Karen stood, her lawyer beside her, looking defeated. "Your actions were absolutely reprehensible. You systematically targeted a vulnerable young woman because of her disability. You abused your authority as HOA president. And when confronted with your victim's humanity, you responded with violence. I find in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. You are hereby ordered to pay Emma Thompson $500,000 in compensatory damages. You are permanently barred from holding any HOA position or authority anywhere in this state. And I'm recommending to the district attorney that criminal assault charges be pursued to the fullest extent of the law." The courtroom erupted, but it wasn't Karen's lawyer trying to speak. It was the sound of justice, finally, resounding through those walls. Karen Morrison's life, as she had known it, was completely destroyed. The story exploded across local and then national news within hours. HOA President Taser's disabled teen became a headline that captured the nation's outrage and attention. The security footage went viral. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed millions of times. Karen Morrison became the face of HOA tyranny, disability discrimination, and abuse of power. The criminal charges were filed within days. She eventually pleaded guilty to assault and received 18 months in prison plus 3 years of probation. The HOA board immediately removed her from all positions and issued a public apology. Riverside Gardens underwent a complete management overhaul. They hired a new management company, implemented comprehensive anti-discrimination policies, and established a resident advocacy committee that included Emma as a founding member. 14 other residents filed their own lawsuits against Karen for years of harassment. Each one won their case. But the real victory wasn't the money. It wasn't the criminal conviction or the news coverage. The real victory was watching Emma find herself again. 2 weeks after the trial concluded, Emma called her father with excitement in her voice that he hadn't heard in months. "Dad, I've been thinking about something." "What's that, sweetheart?" "About what you said in court. About being strong and letting people stand beside you. I want to go back to school. I want to study law. I want to be like you and Jennifer, helping people who get bullied and pushed around by people like Karen." Michael's throat tightened with emotion. 6 months later, Emma enrolled in college, majoring in pre-law with a specific focus on disability rights. She moved into a different apartment with a management company that actually valued their residents as human beings. She started a blog about disability advocacy that gained thousands of followers within months. She testified before the state legislature about desperately needed HOA reform, and she became exactly what Michael always knew she could be, a powerful force for positive change. Michael attended Emma's speech at the state capitol, with pride bursting from his chest. She was testifying in support of new legislation that would restrict HOA authority and create better protections for disabled residents across the state. She wheeled herself to the microphone with confidence, no tremor in her shoulders now. When she spoke, her voice was clear, strong, and unwavering. My name is Emma Thompson. A year ago, I was assaulted by my HOA president because I'm disabled. She tasered me because I parked in my assigned accessible spot. She tasered me because I dared to believe I had the same rights as everyone else. But here's what Karen Morrison didn't understand. Disability doesn't make you weak. Cruelty makes you weak. Bullying makes you weak. Hiding behind rules and regulations to mask your prejudice makes you weak. I survived a car accident that should have killed me. I learned to live in a body that doesn't work the way it used to. I rebuilt my entire life from nothing. That's real strength. The legislation before you today would prevent what happened to me from happening to someone else. Everyone deserves to feel safe in their home. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. And no one should ever be tasered for being disabled. The applause was thunderous and sustained. Several legislators had visible tears in their eyes. The bill passed unanimously 2 weeks later. It was signed into law with Emma standing proudly beside the governor during the ceremony. As we head into this holiday season, I want you to remember something important. Karen Morrison sits in a prison cell, bitter and unchanged, insisting she was right all along. But Emma Thompson sits in her law school library, preparing to defend the next person who faces someone like Karen. She's planning her future. She's changing lives. She's making her old dad incredibly proud every single day. In the end, love won over hate, compassion won over cruelty, justice won over power, and that's the only verdict that truly matters. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, hit that bell, and Merry Christmas to you and your family. Because in this world, we all need a little more justice and a lot more compassion. God bless.